The stench of alien garbage filled Tom Baker's nose despite his suit's air filters. He moved carefully through the mountain of space junk, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the surface of what had once been a cargo ship's hull. All around him, bits of metal and plastic drifted in Beta 9 Station's weak artificial gravity. Sector 7 clearance needs to be done by end of shift, the automated voice of his work system reminded him. Tom ignored it, just like he ignored most automated warnings. 20 years of working as a waste salvage specialist had taught him that the best finds came when you followed your gut, not some computer schedule. Something caught his eye. A glint of black material poking out from under a twisted piece of hull plating. Tom moved closer, his boots making soft clicking sounds against the metal surface. He carefully pushed aside some lighter debris and found himself staring at what looked like a boot. Not just any boot, but what appeared to be an old-style human military combat boot. Tom frowned. Finding human items this far out in space wasn't common. Beta 9 was an alien trading station, and while humans had been allowed to work here for the past decade, their presence was still relatively new. He reached down and pulled, freeing not one but a pair of boots from their metallic tomb. They were surprisingly well preserved, their material still flexible despite what must have been years of exposure to space. The style looked old, reminding him of the boots his grandfather used to wear in those faded photographs from his military days. Warning: unauthorized salvage detected. Please return item to disposal area or register for personal collection. The station agent's voice crackled through his helmet comm. Tom turned the boots over in his hands. There was something about them, something that tugged at his memory. His grandfather used to tell stories about Earth's first interstellar war, about special equipment that had been developed but never used. These boots looked exactly like the ones from those stories. Override salvage warning, Tom said. Personal collection registration. Baker, Thomas J. Waste Management Level 3. The AI chirped in acknowledgement, but Tom barely heard it. He was focused on a small marking inside one of the boots. It wasn't in any language he recognized, yet somehow it seemed familiar, like a word on the tip of his tongue. A shadow passed overhead, one of the massive Blue Crest merchant ships making its way to the station's docking rings. Tom watched it go, suddenly aware of how exposed he was out here in the disposal field. 20 years of experience had taught him another lesson. When you find something valuable, you keep it quiet. He carefully attached the boots to his suit's cargo clips and continued his work, trying to act normal. But his mind kept wandering back to his grandfather's stories. The old man would talk for hours about the war, about the mysterious technologies that had appeared and disappeared just as quickly, about boots that could walk up walls, through fire, even through space itself. Tom had always thought those were just stories, the kind that get better with each retelling. But now, with these boots swaying gently from his hip in the low gravity, he wasn't so sure. Back at his small quarters on the station, Tom cleaned the boots carefully. The material felt strange under his fingers. Not quite leather, not quite synthetic. The soles were thick but lightweight, with unusual patterns that seemed to shift slightly when he wasn't looking directly at them. He set them down on his floor and stepped back, studying them. They looked so ordinary, yet something about them had triggered the station's salvage warnings. Something about them had caught his eye out there in that field of space junk, like they had been waiting for him to find them. Tom's grandfather used to say that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to make something from nothing, to find value in what others threw away. Looking at these boots, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he found something important, something that others had discarded without understanding its true worth. He picked up one of the boots again, turning it over in his hands. Tomorrow, he would take them to the trading post, see if anyone recognized their make or model. But tonight, they were his mystery to puzzle over, his piece of human history found in an alien garbage dump. The boot felt warm in his hands, almost alive. And somewhere in the back of his mind, his grandfather's stories echoed like distant thunder. Tom walked into Joe's trading post wearing the old boots he'd found, trying to act casual. The boots fit perfectly, which seemed odd given how old they looked. They felt comfortable too, more comfortable than any boots he'd ever worn. The trading post was busy that morning, filled with the usual mix of species that called Beta 9 home. 3 blue crest merchants stood near the precious metals counter, their tall frames wrapped in shimmering robes. A group of rock dwellers huddled in the corner, their stone-like skin reflecting the overhead lights. "Morning, Joe," Tom called out to the station's only other human shopkeeper. Joe looked up from his data pad, his gray beard twitching as he started to respond. But before he could speak, one of the blue crest merchants turned around and froze. The alien's neck frills expanded, a sign of surprise or fear in their species. Its companions turned too, and suddenly all 3 were staring at Tom's feet, or more specifically, at his boots. Tom tried to keep walking normally, but he could feel the weight of their stares. The usual arrogance of the blue crests was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. One of them bowed slightly as he passed, something he'd never seen a blue crest do to any human before. "What in space is that about?" Joe whispered when Tom reached the counter. "I've never seen the blues act like that, especially not toward one of us." Tom shrugged, trying to appear casual. "No idea. Listen, I was wondering if you could tell me anything about these boots. Found them in the disposal field yesterday." Joe leaned over the counter to look, but before he could say anything, a deep rumbling sound filled the shop. The rock dwellers had noticed the boots too. Their massive forms shifted uneasily, the grinding sound of their movement filling the space. The oldest among them, his crystalline skin scored with ancient marks, stepped forward. "Those are not for sale," he said in his gravelly voice. It wasn't a question. "I wasn't planning to sell them," Tom replied, feeling increasingly uneasy about the attention. "Just trying to learn what they are." The rock dwellers' crystalline eyes flickered with colored lights, their version of emotional display. "They are not what they appear," he said. "They are." He hesitated, searching for words in the human language. "They are remembered. From the time before." More aliens were gathering now. A pair of mist walkers had drifted over, their semi-transparent forms swirling with unusual patterns. Even the station's cleaning drones seemed to be moving closer, their sensors all pointed at Tom's feet. "Tom," Joe said quietly, "I think you should go. Something's not right here. The last time I saw the old ones act like this was when that artifact trader came through with pieces of Forerunner tech." Tom nodded slowly, trying not to show his growing concern. He turned to leave, and the crowd parted before him like water. The blue crests bowed again as he passed, their neck frills still fully extended. Outside the shop, Tom walked quickly through Beta 9's crowded corridors, noticing more strange reactions. Younger aliens ignored him as usual, but the older ones, the ones who remembered the early days of space travel, they all stopped and stared at the boots. A group of traders offered to buy them right there in the corridor. Their opening bid was enough to buy a small ship. When Tom declined, they doubled the offer. By the time he made it back to his quarters, he'd received 15 different offers, each higher than the last. Tom sat on his bed, staring at the boots he pulled from the garbage. They looked so ordinary, just worn black boots with those strange shifting patterns on the soles. But ordinary boots didn't make blue crests bow or rock dwellers speak of the time before. His grandfather's stories came back to him again. Tales of humanity's first steps into space, of technologies that seemed like magic, of artifacts that could change the course of history. He'd always thought they were just stories meant to entertain a young boy. Now, looking at the boots and remembering the reactions they caused, he wasn't so sure. Something was happening on Beta 9 station. Something big. And somehow, these simple boots he pulled from the trash were at the center of it all. In the corner of his room, his communication panel blinked with an urgent message. Earth Historical Archives wanted to speak with him immediately. Tom stared at the blinking light, then down at his boots. He had a feeling his life was about to become much more complicated. The message from Earth Historical Archives played again on Tom's screen. He'd watched it 5 times now, but something still felt off about it. The man in the recording called himself Marcus, and while he wore the official archive uniform, his eyes held an intensity that made Tom uneasy. A loud knock at his door made him jump. Outside, the Blue Crest delegation waited with another offer for the boots. Tom refused them again, just as he'd refused the rock dwellers an hour earlier. The boots stayed on his feet, where they felt increasingly like they belonged. Final warning, human Tom Baker, the lead Blue Crest said, its neck frills pulsing with frustrated colors. Those artifacts are too important for someone of your... It paused, searching for the right word. Position. Tom closed the door on them, but their words echoed in his mind. They'd called the boots artifacts, just like the rock dweller had hinted, just like Marcus from the archives had said in his message. His room's lights flickered suddenly. Tom spun around just as his window seal hissed. Someone was trying to breach it from outside. He grabbed his emergency pack, always kept ready from years of working in space, and ran for the door. The corridor outside was strangely empty. The usual crowd of aliens and service drones was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. Tom ran toward the maintenance shafts, the boots moving smoothly and quietly despite his speed. They felt different now, almost like they were helping him run. A shadow moved at the corridor's end. A mist walker materialized, its translucent form blocking the path. Two more appeared behind Tom, their misty bodies swirling with unusual patterns. The Time Walker's boots, one of them whispered in its wispy voice. They remember us, as we remember them. Tom backed away, looking for an escape route. The boots suddenly felt warm against his feet, and without thinking, he jumped toward a maintenance hatch on the wall. The boots gripped the vertical surface like it was a flat floor, letting him run straight up the wall. The mist walker's surprised whispers faded behind him as he pulled himself into the maintenance shaft. The boots had just done something impossible, but he didn't have time to think about it. More voices echoed through the station's corridors, all searching for him. Tom Baker. A new voice called out, closer than the others. I'm not here to buy the boots or steal them. I'm here to help you understand them. Tom peered through a vent and saw a human man in an archive uniform. It was Marcus from the message, but something was different about him in person. He stood like someone used to danger, not like a typical historian. You've noticed they respond to you, Marcus continued, somehow knowing exactly where Tom was hiding. They're choosing you, just like they chose others before. But you're the first human they've picked in this timeline. The word timeline made Tom pause. He thought about his grandfather's stories again, about impossible technologies and secrets lost to time. Through the vent, he watched Marcus hold up an old-style paper book. This is from Earth's first space war, Marcus said. The one that was erased from most records. Look at the soldier on the cover. He held the book up to the vent. The faded image showed a human soldier walking up the side of a spaceship, wearing boots identical to the ones on Tom's feet. The boots you found aren't replicas or leftovers, Marcus explained. They're the originals, sent back in time and scattered across space. Someone wanted humanity to find them again, when we were ready, when the right person could find them. More voices echoed through the station. The Blue Crests were coming back, and they weren't alone. Tom heard the heavy footsteps of rock dwellers and the whispers of mist walkers. You have a choice to make, Marcus said quietly. Stay here and lose the boots to whoever gets to you first, or come with me and learn why every spacefaring race in the galaxy is terrified of a pair of old human combat boots. Tom looked down at the boots that had chosen him, then back at Marcus. Through another vent, he could see the search parties getting closer. Time was running out, and he had to make a decision that would change not just his life, but possibly the course of human history itself. Tom made his decision in an instant. The maintenance shaft echoed with the sound of approaching searchers, and the boots seemed to pulse against his feet, urging him forward. He dropped down next to Marcus, ready to run. Not that way, Marcus said quietly, pointing at a seemingly solid wall. The boots know where to go. Trust them. It sounded crazy, but everything about the last day had been crazy. Tom focused on the wall, and the boots responded. The strange patterns on their soles began to shift and glow faintly. Suddenly, Tom could see what looked like an old doorway, its edges barely visible in the station's wall. The Forerunners built secret paths through all their stations, Marcus explained as they hurried through the hidden door. These trade hubs are built on top of their ancient structures. The boots remember the ways through. They emerged into a dimly lit corridor that looked nothing like the rest of Beta-9. The walls were made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light, covered in patterns similar to those on the boots' soles. The air felt old, undisturbed for centuries. A distant boom echoed through the station. The Blue Crests had brought in heavy equipment to search for them. But down here, in these ancient halls, the sound seemed far away and unimportant. "Watch this," Marcus said, touching one of the wall patterns. A holographic display sprang to life, showing star maps and diagrams Tom had never seen before. The text was in no language he recognized, but the boots grew warm again. Somehow he could understand some of it. "They're not just boots," he said slowly, the knowledge flowing into his mind. "They're keys, interfaces. They let humans access Forerunner technology." Marcus nodded. "And more than that. Try running." Tom took a few steps, then broke into a run. The boots responded instantly. His steps became impossibly light and quick. He ran faster than any human should be able to, but it felt natural, easy. He stopped, not even breathing hard. Enhanced strength, speed, reaction time, Marcus listed off. The ability to walk on any surface in any gravity. Perfect balance. Temperature control. The boots are a complete environmental suit in themselves, but that's not why everyone's so interested in them. More explosions sounded above. Closer now. The search parties were getting serious. Tom looked at Marcus. "Then why? What makes these so special?" "Because they're proof," Marcus said, his voice intense. "Proof that humans aren't just some newcomers to galactic civilization. These boots, they're human-made, but they use technology that supposedly died with the Forerunners millions of years ago. Technology that all the ancient races have been trying to recreate for centuries." The wall display shifted, showing what looked like a manufacturing date. Tom's eyes widened as he read it. "That's impossible. This says they were made 100 years from now." "Not impossible. Just complicated." Marcus touched another pattern, and new images appeared. Humanity discovers time travel in the future. But something goes wrong. Something big. These boots and other artifacts were sent back, scattered across time and space. They're meant to help us prepare, to give us the knowledge and technology we'll need. The boots felt heavier suddenly, weighted with the importance of what they represented. Tom watched as the wall display showed more images, other artifacts scattered across the galaxy, and something else, something huge that made his heart skip a beat. "What are those?" he asked, pointing at massive shapes moving through space in one of the images. "The reason we need to prepare," Marcus answered grimly. "The reason the boots had to find the right person. There's more out there than just old alien races and trade stations. Something's coming, something that even the Forerunners couldn't stop." A new alarm blared through the station. The search parties had found a way to detect the energy from the ancient corridor. They were running out of time. "We need to move," Marcus said urgently. "Those boots are just the beginning. There are more artifacts to find, more pieces of the puzzle. The question is, are you ready to see how deep this really goes?" Tom looked down at the boots that had chosen him, that had shown him impossible things, and hinted at even more incredible revelations to come. They hummed with power, waiting for his next step. Whatever was coming, whatever humanity needed to face, it all started with these simple-looking boots he pulled from an alien garbage dump. The hidden corridor led them to what Marcus called a Forerunner archive room. The space was circular, its walls covered in the same light-absorbing material they'd seen before. But here, the patterns were everywhere. flowing like water across every surface. Tom's boots reacted strongly to the room, their soles glowing brighter than ever. Each step made the patterns on the walls shift and change. Information flooded his mind. Technical specifications, historical data, and something that made him stop in his tracks. "These markings inside the boots," Tom said, reaching down to touch them. "I've seen them before. Not in some alien archive, but in my grandfather's old military files." Marcus nodded, unsurprised. Project Timewalker. It was classified beyond top secret. Most people who worked on it didn't even know its real purpose. The wall patterns shifted again, forming into familiar shapes. Tom saw blueprint designs that looked exactly like modern Earth military equipment, except for dates that shouldn't have been possible. The boots design was there, among thousands of other innovations. "Your grandfather," Marcus said quietly, "he wasn't just telling you stories about the war. He was trying to prepare you. He was part of it all, wasn't he?" Tom thought back to those long nights listening to his grandfather's tales. The old man had been so insistent that Tom remember every detail, every strange piece of technology he described. He knew. Somehow, he knew I'd find these. A deep rumble shook the station above them. The search parties were getting closer, but Tom barely noticed. His attention was fixed on a new image forming on the wall, a testing facility on Earth, dated 50 years ago. Scientists worked on prototype boots identical to the ones he wore. "That's impossible," Tom whispered. "These boots are supposed to be from the future. How could they have been in development half a century ago?" "Time isn't as linear as we think," Marcus explained, touching various patterns on the wall. More images appeared, multiple versions of the same research facility, existing in different times, different possible futures. Humanity's path through history is more like a web than a line. These boots, they've existed in multiple timelines, multiple versions of Earth's future, and somehow, they always find their way to where they're needed most. The boots pulsed warmly, and Tom felt a new stream of information flow into his mind. He saw teams of human scientists working with technology they couldn't possibly have invented on their own. But they weren't copying alien designs. They were rediscovering human innovations from other timelines, other possibilities. "We're not just some newcomers to space," Tom said, understanding finally dawning. "We're part of something bigger. These boots, the other artifacts, they're proof that humanity's story is more complex than anyone realized." Marcus pulled out his old book again, turning to a marked page. "Look at this photograph. It's from the first lunar landing." Tom looked closer at the image. There, barely visible in the background of the famous moonwalk, was a boot print that didn't match the astronaut suits. A boot print with the same pattern as the ones he wore now. "They've always been there," Marcus said, "guiding us, helping us advance. Not alien technology teaching humans, but humans teaching humans across time itself. Your grandfather understood that. That's why he made sure you'd know what to look for." Another explosion rocked the station, much closer now. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling as the search parties closed in. The boots responded to the danger, their power humming through Tom's legs, ready for action. "There's more you need to know," Marcus said urgently, pulling up one final image on the wall. It showed a vast facility hidden in an asteroid belt, filled with more artifacts like the boots. "This is where the other pieces are kept. Each one is part of humanity's legacy, scattered across space and time. And now they're activating, calling to each other. Something big is coming, and these boots are just the first step in preparing for it." The wall patterns began to fade as the power in the ancient room fluctuated. Above them, the sounds of the search parties grew louder. Tom looked at the boots that had chosen him, that had led him to discover his own grandfather's secret role in an impossible project. He knew they had to move, had to find the other artifacts before it was too late. But first, they had to escape Beta 9 Station alive. The ancient archive room shook again as another explosion rocked Beta 9 Station. Tom stood with his back to the wall, watching as Marcus quickly downloaded data from the Forerunner systems into a small device. The boots hummed with energy, responding to the growing danger above. "They're not just searching anymore," Marcus said, his eyes on the data stream. "They're evacuating the station. Something spooked them. Something big." As if in response to his words, the boots suddenly grew warm. New information flowed into Tom's mind, but this time it wasn't about the past. He saw flashes of something massive moving through deep space, headed toward known territory. The images matched what they'd seen earlier, but now they were clearer, more immediate. "They're coming," Tom said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "The things you showed me before, they're actually coming. That's why everyone's so desperate to get the boots." Marcus nodded grimly. The old races remember them from before. The Blue Crests, the Rock Dwellers, even the Mistwalkers, they all lost worlds to these things in ancient times. Only the Forerunners knew how to fight them. And humanity. "We're connected to the Forerunners somehow," Tom finished. "Through time travel, through evolution, both. That's what we need to find out." Marcus finished his download and turned to the wall display. "But we're not the only ones looking for answers. Every major species in the galaxy has figured out that humanity is more than we appear. These boots are proof that we're part of something bigger." The wall display changed, showing a map of known space. Dozens of points lit up across it: space stations, abandoned outposts, dead worlds. At each point, a small symbol pulsed. "Other artifacts," Marcus explained. "All human-made, all scattered through time and space. The boots are trying to tell us where they are. They're part of a larger system, pieces of a puzzle we need to solve before it's too late." An alarm blared through the station, different from the others. This one had a deep, resonating tone that made the ancient walls vibrate. Tom watched as fear spread across Marcus's face. "That's an Omega-level alert," Marcus said. "They only use that when—" He was cut off by a new series of images flooding the wall displays. Something massive had just appeared at the edge of the system, a shape that matched Tom's visions. The boots reacted instantly, projecting a holographic map of the station. An escape route lit up, leading through more hidden corridors to a small docking bay Tom had never known existed. "They're not here for us," Tom realized, understanding flowing through him from the boots. "They're here for these archives. For what we just learned. And for the boots," Marcus added, already moving toward the hidden exit. "They're not just tools or weapons. They're keys to understanding who we really are, what humanity's role in the galaxy truly is. If they fall into the wrong hands." They ran through the ancient corridors, the boots guiding Tom's steps perfectly. Behind them, the station shook with impacts that felt much bigger than simple search parties. Whatever had arrived, it was trying to get in. Tom's mind raced as they ran. The boots had chosen him, just as they had chosen others through time. His grandfather had been part of it all, preparing him without ever saying it directly. And now something vast and ancient was bearing down on them, drawn by the same discovery he'd made in that garbage dump. They reached the hidden docking bay just as another impact rocked the station. Through the bay's ancient windows, Tom caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold, a massive shape, dark against the stars, with lines of energy that pulsed in patterns matching those on his boots. "They remember," Tom whispered, knowledge flowing from the boots. "They remember who made them, who fought them. They remember humanity." Marcus was already prepping a small ship that looked as ancient as the docking bay itself. "The real question," he said, "is whether humanity will remember in time. These boots, the other artifacts, they're not just about fighting back. They're about remembering who we were, who we will be." The station shook again as the vast ship outside moved closer. Tom looked down at the boots that had started it all, understanding now that finding them in that garbage dump hadn't been luck or chance. It had been the first step in awakening humanity's true destiny. The ancient ship hummed to life under Marcus's touch, its systems responding to some signal from Tom's boots. Through the view screen, they watched as the massive dark shape drew closer to Beta 9 station. Its surface rippled with familiar patterns, the same ones that decorated the boot's soles. "Earth authorities are demanding we turn over the boots," Marcus said, reading a message on the ship's display. "The blue crests are offering a planet as payment. The rock dwellers are threatening war if we don't give them up." Tom stood at the ship's window, feeling the boot's pulse in time with the approaching vessel's energy patterns. Knowledge continued to flow into his mind, not just information now, but understanding. He saw humanity's path through time, branching and looping back on itself. He saw the role these boots had played, would play, had always played. "We're not giving them to anyone," Tom said quietly. "They were never meant to be given away. They were meant to be found, right here, right now." The massive ship outside fired something at the station. Instead of an explosion, waves of energy rolled across Beta 9's hull, stripping away the modern outer layers. Beneath them, ancient architecture began to show through. The same patterns, the same technology as the boots. "The whole station," Marcus whispered. "It was built on top of." "A Forerunner base," Tom finished. "No, a human base. From another time, another possibility. The boots didn't just lead us here. They woke it up." Their small ship's systems suddenly lit up with new information. The boots were connecting to everything, showing them the truth. Beta 9 wasn't just a trading post built on ancient ruins. It was a nexus point, a place where multiple timelines converged. The boots had brought them here because this was where the choice had to be made. "We have to decide," Marcus said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "This isn't just about running or fighting. This is about choosing humanity's path." Tom nodded, the boots' knowledge flowing freely now. "Three choices. We can run. Take the boots to Earth. Let them study them. Try to unlock their secrets the slow way. We might learn enough to survive what's coming, or we might doom ourselves by waiting too long." The huge ship outside had stopped firing. It hung in space, waiting, its patterns pulsing in a rhythm that matched Tom's heartbeat. "Second choice," Tom continued, "we use the boots' power here and now. Wake up this whole station, turn it back into what it once was. The most powerful defensive platform ever built. We could fight them, just like humanity did in another time. Another version of history." "And the third choice?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Tom looked down at the boots that had chosen him, that had waited in that garbage dump for just the right person, at just the right moment. "We go forward, find the other artifacts, learn who we really are, who we've always been. Not just fighters or survivors, but something more." The ship's systems pinged. They were out of time. The massive vessel outside was charging its main weapons. Behind them, Beta 9 station was crumbling, its modern layers falling away to reveal its true nature. Earth authorities were launching ships. The alien races were evacuating, their vessels scattering like startled birds. "Your grandfather knew," Marcus said softly. "He knew you'd be here, knew you'd have to make this choice. That's why he told you those stories, prepared you without ever saying it directly." Tom closed his eyes, feeling the boots' power flow through him. They weren't just tools or weapons or keys. They were a bridge between past and future, between what humanity was and what it could become. All those other artifacts scattered across space and time, they were waiting for someone to understand their true purpose. "We go forward," Tom said, opening his eyes. The boots hummed in agreement, connecting to the ship's systems. New coordinates appeared. The location of the next artifact, the next piece of humanity's greater truth. The massive ship fired, its energy beam aimed to destroy the station and everything around it. But Tom and Marcus's small vessel was already moving, slipping between the layers of space and time that the boots had shown them. Behind them, Beta 9 station began its transformation, its ancient systems awakening to face the threat. The boots pulsed one final time, showing Tom a glimpse of the path ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing important ever was. Humanity's next great adventure was beginning, all because he found a pair of old boots in an alien garbage dump.